meeting to order. Rita, would you do a roll call?
Mr. Doherty?
Present.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes, present.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Roche?
I am here.
Chairman Smith?
Here.
Let the record show the town manager and the assistant staff attorney and myself are also present.
Thank you, Rita. We all have had in advance a copy of the minutes of last the meeting in July, actually. Are there any questions, comments, or suggested changes? If not, could I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Rita?
Mr. Doherty?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Roche?
Yes.
Chairman Smith?
Yes. Thank you. Does anyone have any additions or withdrawals, deferrals, or arrangements to the agenda that you had in advance? Rita?
No.
No changes? You have in front of you the future meeting dates. You now notice that we've changed the November and December meeting to avoid the holidays. Get those in your calendar if you would, and if you know that you're not going to be here for any of them, would you please let Rita know? It'd be very helpful. We'll now begin the public hearing. Is there anybody have any declaration of ex parte communication?
I met with Rob Leonard of the Little Club on Tuesday, September 17th.
Just a second, Curtis. Okay.
Concerning what the paddles and the balls would be used in the pickleball courts.
You met with whom?
Rob Leonard of the Little Club.
Mandy? None?
No.
Yes, Curtis?
Yeah, I had a brief meeting with Rod Curtis up in Rhode Island, because he wanted to show me, physically show me the paddle, the new paddles that they proposed to use and the paddle ball that they proposed to use. But that was the only communication that I had.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Any?
No.
I also spoke to Ross Curtis earlier this week, and the content of the conversation would really be almost identical to what he has written us in his letter or memo that's contained within the file. I don't think anything we said was outside the bounds of what's contained in that letter that Ross wrote to us. Rita, would you administer the oath to those who may speak at today's meeting?
Anyone who thinks they may speak, please stand and raise your right hand. And then see that we get a card or something identifying you by the end of the meeting. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you, Rita. The first item on the agenda is an application for development approval. I believe that some folks from Slattery and Associates are here today to do the presentation. You're up. Are you Robert? Introduce yourself, please.
Testing. Good morning, Chairman Smith, board members. My name is Jose Fernandez. I'm principal and partner with Slattery and Associates Architects. With me here today is Robert Halula, which is the other principal and partner of the firm. For the record, our offices are located at 2060 Northwest 2nd Avenue in Boca Raton, Suite 2. And thank you for seeing us today. We're here to present the building that's basically right across the street, located at 3883 Golfview. I'm sure you're all familiar with the building. It's 2 buildings away. It's a 4-story building. It contains 7 residential units, condo units. And the reason we're here before you today is that in the last year or two, the building has been suffering from some water intrusion, whether through windows or superficial cracks and stucco, and some items that the owners and management wanted to repair, but they wanted to take advantage of the opportunity prior to doing the repairs and doing some architectural enhancements. So we're here to present some facade renovations that we're proposing. There are no structural additions or improvements proposed at this time. They are really just cosmetic and architectural in nature. If we could go, this, what we're showing right there is a ground floor plan of the building. As you can see, it has the entry on the east side, it has some parking on the west side that's underneath the building. It's basically a podium building, 4 stories with some parking on the rear and just 7 residential units. I'll just go to the next slide.
They're not in order, unfortunately. It's hard to see. Is it 200? That's
We can go back to the one with renovations.
yeah, I see
The existing
It's
portion.
too far out. Let me look at the- All right, existing elevations.
I hope everyone can see this here. We also have, let me check this out real quick. These are basically the 4 existing elevations. As they would be if they were complete. There are some shutters that are missing. There's obviously some existing stucco cracks. But basically the building has single hung windows, very horizontal in nature.
It's awful high.
It has to be blurred because I can't see them. And it has some balcony railings that have been there for years. And the idea is, it's one of those difficult buildings that based on the architectural guidelines of the town, it's a 4-story building without sloped roofs. In order to sort of get it closer to some of the architectural guidelines, what we wanted to do is enhance or correct some of the architectural details. Some of the existing details are like stucco keystones over the windows, but there's really no sill detail or lintel details. The shutters are basically screwed or applied to the side of the to the side of the building. They're not the right size. They don't really cover the full opening in the true sense of what shutters should be doing, and we're hoping to correct some of those details. In addition to modifying the railings, which are not to code. And I'd like to show the sort of the most important elevation, which is the west elevation, and shows the existing and the proposed. The image that you see on the left is the existing elevation, and the one on the right is the proposed. And what we've done, because we have the single hung windows, we wanted to elongate the proportions of that by creating a sill detail, banding details, a lintel detail that has the keystone, and create a stucco panel below the window to sort of elongate the proportion, and then add the shutters that you can see there, the difference in the shutters in size. And the shutters are also going to be in a sort of a accented dark blue to add a little bit of accent to the building. We also want to add that color to the entry door, and the entry element, we're proposing on removing that sort of circular awning and adding a pilaster detail with a true dintel, sort of an entablature over the opening and some detail. And then the railings, we want to change them from the vertical pickets to more of a weave, something that's more reminiscent of more of a Bermuda style railing detail. And then the color scheme is more of a softer pastel instead of the warmer tans. We want to move towards a more pastel light gray and whites, with the blue of the awnings, sorry, not the awnings, the shutters, and the doors being the accent color. We also want to take advantage of being in front of the board and propose a few landscape enhancements. And Carol Perez, landscape architect, is here and available to answer any questions on that. It's just some minor enhancements. The lower part of the building also has a coral sort of rough rock on the podium, and we're proposing on stuccoing over that to make it more of a smooth finish and adding a banding detail. We also want to enlarge the cornice detail at the top of the building. Right now it's a very small little detail, it's almost like a drip edge. And we'd like to enhance the cornice detail at the top of the building by making that a little bit more substantial. And removing the 4 little sort of inadequate acorn details that are on top of there. I think that sort of covers the architectural proposed enhancements, and of course we're available for any questions.
Do you have any questions?
I just have a few questions. It's not an impact class building, is it?
I believe some of the units, the sliders on the balconies have already been changed out.
Okay.
The windows are, but not all the doors.
That's correct. All the windows have been changed out over the years.
And you're gonna keep asphalt pavement? Was there, consider pavers, or you just?
I believe we were considering some pavers at the entry, sort of at the bottom of the steps that you see there, which are the entry steps, and maybe leading out towards the street. There is no sidewalk, so it would sort of be, but we could propose,
Just curious. what
sure,
your
we
thoughts
could
on that.
propose that. There has been some talk about enhancing the driveway, but not paving the whole drive.
You said the current railing wasn't the code, was it too low?
I believe it's a little bit low, but it's really the picket spacing.
Oh, okay.
It's really the spacing of the vertical pickets. They're too far apart.
The only landscaping change you're showing here, looks like some pots with some small, I don't know, palms or something beside either the steps going up, is that all you're proposing?
Hi, I'm Carol Perez from AGT Land. What we're proposing is to put two coconut palms in the front. Right now there's sable palms. We're proposing to take those out and replace them with coconut palms. There's a beautiful gumbo limbo on the south side, and there's a lot of vegetation that's grown up in it, so we're proposing to clean that out and underplant it with shade-tolerant planting. Also on the south side, there is an overgrown ficus hedge. They're almost like trees now. We're proposing to take those out and install a native green buttonwood hedge, or really, they're almost trees, 10 to 12 foot high trees, to replace that. Also, it'd be a nice screen on that south side. And then we have, in the back, we have a couple of sable palms and a silver buttonwood tree to go in to make up for there's a ficus tree we're taking out in the back that's in really poor shape also. Extremely poor shape, really. And we're just gonna refresh the shrubbery around the building and do some layered planting along that wall in the front, below, deck wall.
Do you intend to make the new shutters actually functioning shutters? Are they just gonna be fixed mounted, or are they gonna be able to swing closed?
Well, because they have impact windows, they would just be fixed, but we're hoping to add a little bit of detail, maybe some exposed hardware, so it looks like, so they may look like they're functioning shutters. But they will be the size of the opening, so.
Anybody else?
All right, it's a fantastic addition.
I think it's lovely too.
Yeah.
So happy to see it.
Everybody, staff, city manager.
We think it's a marked improvement.
Okay, any comments from the audience that they want to speak? Okay, if not, we need a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion. Motion to approve a level 2 architectural site plan based on a finding that the proposed facade renovations to an existing 4-story condominium, including stucco, paint, balcony railings, and landscaping enhancements meet the minimum tentative design manual and applicable review standards with the following condition. 1, any minor modifications in the approved landscaping shall be submitted to the town manager for review and approval, and any modifications shall be brought back to the ARPB for review and approval prior to the commencement of landscaping.
Is there a second?
A second.
Been moved and seconded. Rita?
Mr. Dougherty?
Yeah.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Roche?
Yes.
Chairman Smith?
Yes. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much.
Question the call. Can Curtis vote? He can determine if he can vote.
If there's a quorum in the house, then you can do that on the phone.
Thank you.
But you can't be counted as making the quorum. It
Makes
has
sense.
to be in the house.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is a continuation from our meeting on July 25th, 2019. A presentation by the Little Club, who's proposing the construction of 2 pickleball courts to the east of their cart storage barn. Would you please introduce yourself as you speak? There's going to be more than one of you, I assume.
I'm Brian Donahue with Insight Studio. I'm here on behalf of the Little Club, where the land planners and landscape architects that have been working on this application for them. Our address is 8144 Okeechobee Boulevard, West Palm Beach. Rita, I'm gonna plug this in. Presentation. Can I take this other one out? As you mentioned, we were before you all back in July to discuss the application request, which is level 2 site plan approval for the addition of 2 pickleball courts on the east side of the property there, which is highlighted in red. See a couple board members that weren't here, so I won't be too repetitive, but I will go through the basics of the original presentation. Here's the proposed site plan. The location, size, scale, and layout of the courts has not changed. What we have changed since the last meeting that's shown on this graphic is on the west side of the courts. In yellow, you see a fence added. That was at the request of, I believe, one of the board members. That's a 4-foot chain link fence that would have a double gate for maintenance purposes that would open to the patio space to the west. Additionally, we've increased the height of the hedge from a 4-foot clusia hedge to an 8-foot clusia hedge that's on the north and the east side to provide additional vegetative screening. So just a brief overview, we do have 2 pickleball courts. There's access from the west where the existing cart path is. We've created circulation around the court, so it's a 60 by 60 area that allows pickleball players to circulate around the courts without interrupting the other games. There's some patio seating areas. We are proposing a cushioned court surface, and I'll get into that a little further. There is a fence with screening located on the west side of the court, landscape buffering, and on the east side we are proposing the Acoustiblok, which I'll speak to a little more, which dampens the noise associated with pickleball. There is no lighting proposed, so this would only be a daytime function. So at the last meeting, we did spend quite a bit of time speaking about the noise. We heard from some of the adjacent residents at Hillside. So we've done our homework. We've tried to do as much as we possibly can at this point to mitigate the sound. So some of those include, which the original proposal, we were going to include a rubberized surface on the court, so that should help to dampen the sound. The specialized Acoustiblok fencing, that's actually a product that is used for generator enclosures and screening of mechanical equipment, so it's been tried and true. It's been around for quite some time. They've actually come out with a product now that they're promoting for pickleball because of the exact issue we're facing today. So that's proposed on the east side of the courts on the fence to help mitigate the sound. There's also an 8-foot tall hedge, so originally we had it at 4 feet. We're going to go ahead and bump that up to 8 feet at the time of installation and let that continue to grow, so that can be maintained as tall as 12, 14 feet. Another thing that we think really makes a difference is the balls. The typical pickleball is a plastic, almost like a wiffle ball. It's a hard plastic. We're proposing that the ball that would be used is known as a Gamma Foam quiet ball, so it's basically a styrofoam, or not a styrofoam, like a rubber foam ball. We've actually brought some paddles and the balls and things to do some demonstrations for you today so you can hear the difference. We're also proposing a quieter paddle, so same thing. There's been obviously issues with pickleball, so some of the manufacturers have looked at other alternatives, so there's a paddle that actually dampens the sound, so that's being proposed as well. And then the final thing is the sound study was requested by the board at the previous meeting. So we hired a third-party consultant who prepared a sound study, and we do have the findings from that study that does show that the decibel levels from the pickleball are significantly lower than many of the things that go on today, such as mowing and trimming hedges and grass and such. So here is the ball. It looks nice on the screen, but we actually have it so you can touch and feel and hear it. Again, Gamma Foam ball, so this is a solid rubber ball. Rob, do you have that ball? We're going to also do a demonstration. pass this around if that's okay, but you can feel the difference and we'll hear the difference in a minute. This is the hard plastic typical ball, and this is the foam ball that's proposed. So yeah, maybe if you tap it on the desk or something, you can hear the difference in what the sound would be for the balls there. Additionally, we do have the paddles. It's a sniper paddle. It's a dampening paddle. It's shown on the screen. We have them with us today, so we can discuss that. So the Acoustiblok Fence is a product that I mentioned, will be on the east side of the court to dampen the sound. So there's actually been studies. There was one out in Arizona where this product was used. It was an RV park that had built pickleball courts, and there were some adjacent residents that had some concerns after the courts were built. It did put in the Acoustiblok fencing, and it did reduce the decibel levels by approximately 10 to 12 decibels just by the fencing, which relates to approximately a 50% reduction. This is based on the information provided on their website. So that's a 50% reduction in the sound perceived. Decibels are somewhat confusing, as I've come to learn here recently. I've done a lot of research and studied them. You know, one decibel reduction, it's not a perfect ratio, so say it's 60 decibels down to 30 decibels. That doesn't mean you're 50% of the sound. A minimal amount of decibel reduction can relate to a significant amount of sound reduction as we perceive it.
So that is not opaque, I mean, you can see through it.
It actually is opaque. It's a solid.
Well, I mean, because it appeared as if you could see through it.
This is the picture that was on their website. I think it is. The product is actually opaque. It's almost like it's got like a foam. It's like an 1/8 inch thick, so it is opaque.
Would that be screened by the hedging from view from the exterior?
It would be. The hedge is going to be 8 feet tall, and the fence is going to be 8 feet tall. So at the time of planting, you would not see that.
And you're not suggesting north and south, just east right now?
That's correct.
Would north and south?
North and east, or only east?
East.
Only east.
The east is the 8-foot fence.
Would north and south help, or why didn't you, since you're ordering this product?
It may. At this point, we felt that just on the east.
But I just
side
don't know how it all
especially.
works. Sound, does it go every direction?
Yes.
Presumably. Okay.
Presumably.
All right.
So the sound study that we prepared was, or we didn't prepare, a third-party consultant prepared. The sampling was conducted on the east property line where the courts would be located. There were some mock-up trials where different samplings were done with hitting the ball off of asphalt or hitting it off the paddles, bouncing it off the paddles, serving it as you would during a match. And the results there highlighted concluded that the peak sound levels, and this is directly from the sound consultant, the peak sound levels produced by the various groundskeeping equipment, excluding the golf cart, and you'll see this in further detail, lawnmowers, hedge trimmers, weed eaters, were substantially higher than the peak sound levels produced by hitting the pickleballs. And just to add into that, the study did not take into consideration any of the other variables that were adding the Acoustiblok Fence. It didn't take into consideration the rubberized surface, the hedging material, because that's not in place, so we couldn't test that. Also, the sound study was completed without taking an inverse square law into account, which states that every time you double distance, decibels decrease by approximately 6 decibels. So as you get further away from the sound, obviously the decibel levels go lower.
Question. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I mean, this is relevant to what you just said. In the summary of the sound study,
Yes.
under the discussion of results, I mean, the last sentence of the first paragraph there says the peak sound level difference between hitting the hard ball and the soft ball appeared to be negligible.
And that is correct. So decibels again are somewhat confusing. I'm not a sound expert. I'm going to speak based on what I've learned about sound, and we can talk about it a little more in detail here on the sound level results in this chart that's shown on the screen now. This is directly from the report. But basically you have the first 3 columns as you look at this from the left to right. The first column, and this is my understanding of it, again, I'm not a sound expert, and its decibels are somewhat complicated. If you start reading about it, there's different frequencies that the ear experiences and you hear. They've been tested in different frequencies. So my understanding is that the left column basically is an average of the sound that occurs from essentially there's a graph that happens. So whenever the sound levels go up and down, up and down, up and down during any experience. So the left is an average of that graph. If you took an average, that's the average decibel level. The middle is an average of the max level. So when you're hitting those peaks in the sounds that are occurring, that's the middle column. I'm sorry, the second column. The third column is actually the highest noise that's heard during the testing. So if one time the ball was hit harder, or if, that's another thing we take into consideration is the other noise that's around. So if somebody in the background drops a shovel or something, it may register on the sound study. So that's the third column, the highest peak noise heard at one time during the study. And then the final column is basically just a difference from the baseline. So meaning the increase in decibel levels from the baseline. And the way I understand it, the baseline is basically if they just turn on the sound machine without doing any specific testing, that's the background noise that you're experiencing. Maybe there's a lawnmower, maybe there's a car in the background, maybe there's some other thing. So you can't create a quiet atmosphere. You're picking up noise from other places, so that's what your baseline is. That's my understanding, and based on that, if you look across the board here, now on the left is our chart, on the right is just a general understanding of decibels with different scenarios that we're all familiar with. As you can see, that the softball and the hardball, hitting it like a serve or hitting it bouncing it off the paddles, if you're not hitting it, it's hard to serve it. Those decibel level ranges across the board are very, very similar to two people having a conversation, a regular conversation, which are highlighted in blue there. So if you look at the chart to the right, that compares to, somewhere in that 60 decibel range, and you compare that back over, that's generally where we are. We're in the 50 to 60 range on most of these tests. When you look at the highlighted in green, that's just, we picked the Toro lawnmower, for instance. That's at 78, 89, 105 is the peak there, which matches up, to the other side there on the green, which shows, in the 85 to 90 mark is when you're getting into the lawnmower, and that's an average level. So, point being that there's a lot of activities that occur at the Little Club that are much noisier than what we're proposing. These things have been going on for years. They can do it I know they're restricted by ordinances. I think it's 8 to 5 or 5:30 when they can do maintenance or construction type practices. But these things happen every single day there. And what we're proposing is a significantly lower sound decibel level.
Brian?
Yes.
Brian, this is Curtis, and, off-site. I heard you say that you were going to be putting the Acoustinet on the east side of the courts.
That's correct.
How about the north side of the courts? Because we've had lots of people writing letters from St. Andrew.
At this time, that is not proposed, but we're certainly open for discussion, and if that's something that is necessary to move this project forward and be good neighbors, we'd be willing to do that.
Yeah, I mean, this is just, a furthering of, trying to be good neighbors. I think we should, if in fact this does get approved, we have to take an extra step beyond, try to make sure that everything is as compatible as possible with all the neighbors.
Absolutely. And we're willing to work with the neighbors and the board here today to hopefully come to a conclusion that everybody can live with. And finally, the location has been questioned. I think we addressed it pretty well in the previous meeting, but just to summarize, there are a couple of croquet courts that are in the middle of the golf course. They're built today, so to relocate the croquet court over to the location where the pickleball is and put the pickleball where the croquet is going to go, it's not feasible for the club. There's a couple significant reasons. First and foremost, the club uses this for overflow parking for events, for golf cart staging when they have golf tournaments. So for them to lose that real estate is not really an option at this point. The croquet courts would be double the size. It would take up pretty much the entire space there. Another thing that we've heard from the grounds crew is that maintaining the turf there, it's not an ideal location. The croquet courts are obviously a hybrid high-level turf, so to maintain that turf, a little bit of shade that's cast from the hillside home, and also the air flow is not real good in that location, so it's not an ideal location for growing the turf. And finally, it's a social sport. At any time there could be 30, 40 people out there playing and gathering, and so to separate those experiences and the way they do the round robin tournaments, it's less than ideal. So keeping those courts contiguous is really the way that they should function. I believe that concludes the presentation. We do have the paddles, as I mentioned, and the balls. We think it would be very beneficial for the board and for everybody in the room to actually hear, what the difference is in hitting the plastic ball versus the rubber ball. We feel it's very significant. We've done a lot, and we appreciate if you guys would take a listen. Maybe we could all walk outside. I don't know if that's okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay. We could do that now, or if you guys want to do questions, then we can do that later.
Okay, so I had suggested, they had originally requested that we have a meeting over at the Little Club.
okay.
And I said, no, that's, we have enough trouble with getting everybody able to come to these meetings. So I said, we can have a demonstration where we actually get up and go outside and do that. We can video it, the lieutenant back there can move the equipment out there, so we can do that. If you're ready to do that now, that's fine. If you want to ask some questions right now, we can do that first.
See the demo and then come in and talk?
Yeah,
Okay.
I might raise some questions, so, yeah.
Okay, so I guess we have to announce we were taking a couple minutes to move